The first lie entered the hearing room in a clear plastic sleeve. My mother had signed it in blue ink. I, Eleanor Cole, state that my injuries were caused by a fall in my bathroom. My husband, Captain Raymond Cole, did not strike, choke, threaten, or restrain me. Raymond placed the statement on the evidence table with both hands, as if it were something fragile. Then he looked across the room at me. He did not smile. Raymond was too disciplined for that when cameras were present. Behind his chair, my mother sat with a pale scarf wrapped high around her neck. A blue glass bird held the fabric in place. The brooch had belonged to her mother, but I had never seen it fastened that close to her throat. The old air conditioner clicked inside the wall. 53 seconds later, it clicked again. I knew because I had started counting. At the far end of the witness row, one chair remained empty. A white card rested against its microphone. Major General Thomas Keegan, United States Army, retired. I had not spoken to General Keegan in almost 6 years. Raymond did not know that the man he planned to call as a character witness had once signed my evaluation reports. Raymond's attorney rose. This case began because Captain Cole's estranged stepdaughter turned a private family misunderstanding into a professional attack. Estranged stepdaughter. He described me as a part-time National Guard physician who had allowed personal resentment to influence a medical situation. He said I had pressured my mother to accuse a respected police captain during a moment of confusion. He said the department had terminated a man with 31 years of service before any criminal court had found him guilty. Each point was technically true. Together, they created a person I did not recognize. The attorney glanced toward the empty chair. Major General Keegan will describe Captain Cole's leadership during the Bellwether floods and his commitment to public safety. Raymond lowered his eyes with practiced humility. My mother folded a tissue into a square, then folded it again. The chair beside me creaked as Maya Ellis leaned closer. "Do not correct him yet," she whispered. "I had no intention of doing so." The board chair asked what event had started the investigation. "A bathroom fall," Raymond's attorney said. Those 2 words carried me back nearly 4 months. I had been leaving the Virginia National Guard headquarters after a long planning session when my phone rang. A nurse at a hospital outside Richmond told me my mother had been brought in after a fall at home. She was awake, stable, and asking that no one make a fuss. Then the nurse placed her on the phone. "Lena," my mother said. Her voice was rough and smaller than usual. I stopped walking. Physicians learn to hear certain things before they understand them. Air moving through a narrowed space. A sentence shortened because swallowing hurts. "Mom, are you having trouble breathing?" "No." I just slipped. Her answer came too quickly. In the background I heard Raymond. "She is fine. Tell her you are fine, Ellie." My mother went quiet. "I am coming to the hospital," I said. Raymond took the phone. "That is unnecessary. I was not asking." When I reached the emergency department, Raymond was standing outside my mother's room in his police uniform. His jacket was unzipped. His service weapon sat on his right hip. Hospital security had given him a visitor badge, even though half the staff knew him by name. He blocked the doorway without appearing to block it. Raymond had always been good at that. When I was 17, he could stand in a hallway and make an entire house feel locked. "Your mother is embarrassed," he said. "Do not make this worse." I looked past him. My mother sat upright on the bed. Her scarf was wrapped around her neck. The blue bird caught the fluorescent light. She was folding a paper towel into smaller rectangles. I stepped around Raymond. "Mom, tell me where it hurts." "My shoulder." "Did you lose consciousness?" "No." "Does it hurt when you swallow?" Raymond answered. "She has reflux." I kept my eyes on my mother. "Did you hit your neck?" Raymond answered again. "She hit the towel rack." My mother's fingers stopped folding. I saw a red mark behind her left ear. Not large. The kind most people would miss because they were looking for something shaped like a hand. I moved closer without touching her. "Mom, I need to speak with you alone." Raymond gave a short laugh. "You put on a uniform 1 weekend a month and call yourself a soldier." "I have spent 30 years protecting real families." His voice was low enough that the nurses could pretend not to hear. I turned toward him. "You can wait outside." That was all I said. I did not tell him my rank. I did not tell him how many soldiers were in my chain of responsibility. None of that mattered inside my mother's room. What mattered was that every question I asked her received an answer from the man standing behind me. Back in the hearing room, Raymond's attorney was still speaking. He told the board I had confused professional concern with family resentment. He said my mother had denied abuse from the beginning. Across the aisle, she folded the tissue one more time. The air conditioner clicked. The board chair looked toward the witness table. Call the clinician who performed the examination, doctor. Priya Nair stood. She crossed the hearing room with a thin folder held against her chest. She did not look at me as she took the oath. That mattered. Raymond's attorney had described her as my colleague, my subordinate, and an extension of my grievance. In reality, Priya worked for a hospital system with no connection to my guard position. She had been the physician on duty after I removed myself from my mother's care. The board chair asked why I had stepped away. Priya answered carefully. Because Dr. Brooks was both family and a physician. She recognized a conflict and requested an independent examination. Raymond's attorney nodded as though that answer supported him. Nearly 4 months earlier, I had stood outside my mother's treatment bay with my hands flat against the cold metal rail of a supply cart. I had spent most of my adult life making decisions in rooms where hesitation cost blood. But the right decision that night was to stop being the doctor. I found Priya near the medication room. I need you to take over the patient in Bay 12. She glanced through the glass panel and saw Raymond. Family, my mother. Suspected mechanism, possible neck compression. Hoarseness, pain with swallowing, tenderness behind the left ear. Priya did not ask what I thought had happened. She asked whether my mother had agreed to speak with another clinician. That part is not clear yet, I said. Priya nodded. Then my first job is consent. Only someone who had worked these cases would say it that way. Not evidence, consent. When Priya entered the room, she asked Raymond to wait outside. He refused the first time. Hospital security stepped closer. He looked at me as though I had arranged a humiliation. I had arranged a door that could close. My mother agreed to the examination after Priya promised she could stop at any point. The scan later showed no torn artery and no acute fracture. Raymond would repeat that fact for weeks as if a normal scan erased everything else. It did not erase the sudden change in her voice. It did not erase the pain when she swallowed. It did not erase the small burst vessels near her ear or the tenderness along her neck. But none of those findings could identify whose hands had been there. That question still belonged to my mother. I waited outside until Priya finished. The vending machine beside me swallowed $2 and refused to release the water bottle. I hit the return button 3 times. Priya came out with her folder. She agreed to documentation, she said. She has not agreed to a police report. Did she tell you what happened? She said she fell. Do you believe her? That is not the question I am qualified to answer. I should have understood what she was giving me. Instead, I went back inside. Raymond stood near the foot of the bed, one hand resting on the rail. My mother had put the bluebird brooch back through her scarf. I sat beside her. Mom, Dr. Nair documented injuries that do not fit a simple fall. Raymond exhaled through his nose. Here we go. I ignored him. Did he put pressure on your neck? My mother's eyes moved toward the door. Lena, stop. I need you to answer me. No, you need me to say what you have already decided. Her voice broke on the last word. I heard fear. I also heard accusation, and that was the part I answered. I am trying to keep you alive. Raymond stepped closer. She is alive. My mother pulled the blanket higher. I fell in the bathroom. The sentence was softer but more final. I had spent years teaching young officers that triage came in order. Safe tonight, choices tomorrow, decisions later. With my mother, I abandoned my own rule. I wanted every answer that night. Within 40 minutes, she signed her discharge papers. Raymond helped her into her coat. When I reached for her bag, she held it against her chest. I am going home, she said. With him, with my husband. Raymond opened the door. My mother walked past me without looking back. In the hearing room, Priya explained the limits of the scan. The imaging answered whether there was a major vascular injury, she said. It did not answer whether pressure had been applied to Mrs. Cole's neck. Raymond's attorney stood, and Mrs. Cole denied being strangled. Yes. She declined a police report. Yes. She left voluntarily with her husband. Yes. Each answer placed another brick into Raymond's false victory. Behind him, my mother sat with her hands folded over the blue bird at her throat. The attorney turned toward the board. There was no victim asking to be rescued. There was only a daughter who refused to accept her mother's answer. That sentence hurt because part of it was true. Maya slid a yellow legal pad toward me. We preserve records. We do not persuade. I read the words twice. That was when my objective changed. I stopped trying to make my mother accuse Raymond. I began making sure Raymond could not erase what the systems around him had recorded. The next morning, Maya sent preservation notices to the hospital, the police department, the county dispatch center, and Raymond's campaign office. By noon, Raymond had called a press conference. He held it beneath a banner that read "Protecting Bellwether Families." My mother stood beside him. The blue bird brooch was visible above the collar of her coat. Raymond spoke without notes. He said a private medical event had been exploited by an estranged relative with military connections. He said certain people believed rank allowed them to override the wishes of ordinary citizens. Then he placed one hand against my mother's back and told the cameras she had been forced to relive an embarrassing accident because I refused to accept that she was capable of making her own decisions. My mother did not speak. Raymond spoke for her again. The clip aired at noon. By 1:15, Maya received a call from a woman named Tessa Mullins. Tessa had worked as a dispatcher for Bellwether County for 16 years. She now handled billing disputes for an ambulance company and had not spoken to Raymond in almost 5 years. She did not begin by saying she believed my mother. She began with a phrase Raymond had used during the press conference. Family disturbance without a credible victim. Maya placed the call on speaker after asking Tessa's permission. "That language means something to you?" I asked. "It means Captain Cole still talks the way he writes." Tessa's voice was quick and dry. She sounded like someone who had spent years reducing emergencies to locations, unit numbers, and times. She told us that domestic calls involving certain officers or county employees had sometimes been reclassified after supervisors reviewed them. A complaint entered as suspected assault might later appear as a verbal disagreement. A report with an identified victim could become a disturbance with no cooperative party. "Were you involved in changing them?" Maya asked. "I entered what I was told to enter." "That is not the same question." Tessa went silent. "No," she said, "I did not change the original calls. But I watched the changes happen." She still had an old red spiral notebook from her dispatch years. It contained shift codes and case numbers she had written down when supervisors asked her to explain why a call had disappeared from the daily incident list. Maya asked why she had kept it, because when a record changes after your shift ends, you start wondering whether you remembered it wrong. That afternoon, we met Tessa in the small office above Maya's dry cleaner. The building always smelled faintly of hot cotton and cleaning solvent. Washers turned beneath the floor, sending a soft vibration through the table. Tessa placed the red notebook between us. She did not slide it toward me. "I am not giving you this," she said. "I am showing you where to look." That distinction made me trust her more. 3 case numbers had Raymond's initials beside them. One involved a dispatcher's sister, one involved a county contractor. The third belonged to a woman named Marisol Vega. Each case had been recoded within 24 hours. Tessa could not prove who made the changes. Dispatchers used shared terminals. Supervisors reviewed reports. Credentials were sometimes left active during shift changes. She gave us direction, not proof. Maya wrote the case numbers into the preservation request. I asked Tessa whether anyone had objected at the time. She tapped one entry with her fingernail, Officer Danielle Price. Back in the hearing room, Raymond's attorney was explaining the Bellwether floods. For 3 days, heavy water had cut off 2 neighborhoods near the river. Raymond had coordinated boat crews, moved elderly residents from a flooded care home, and stayed on duty through 2 nights. Those things were true. I remembered seeing his photograph in the newspaper. He was carrying a boy through waist-deep water. My mother had clipped the article and kept it on the refrigerator for years. Raymond had saved people. That fact did not excuse what he later did. It also did not disappear because I needed him to be guilty. The board listened carefully as his attorney described the evacuations. Major General Keegan personally commended Captain Cole's leadership, he said. The general will explain why one disputed family incident should not erase 3 decades of service. The witness chair remained empty. Raymond looked composed. He had always understood that a true story could protect a false one if both were placed close enough together. The board chair asked whether prior good service prevented a finding of serious misconduct. No, Raymond's attorney said, but it should make this board skeptical of witnesses who appeared only after a political controversy. He was already preparing to attack women he claimed not to know existed. Danielle Price met us 2 days later in the parking lot of a middle school, where she now worked as a resource officer. She wore a different county's uniform. Her patrol shoes were polished, but the leather had cracked near the toes. She did not invite us inside. I heard Tessa contacted you, she said. Maya confirmed it. Danielle looked at me. If I speak, I am not joining a campaign against him. There is no campaign, I said. There is always a campaign once cameras arrive. She told us she had responded to Marisol Vega's home 9 years earlier. Marisol had called after her husband struck her and smashed a kitchen chair. Danielle documented the damage, photographed Marisol's lip, and wrote that the husband was the primary aggressor. Raymond reviewed the report. He told me I had mistaken fear for innocence, Danielle said. He wanted the report changed to mutual combat. Did you change it? Maya asked. No, what happened? 3 days later I was moved from days to permanent nights. She still had the transfer schedule. She also remembered an email Raymond had sent her supervisor, but she no longer had access to it. Maya asked whether she had signed a settlement agreement when she left Bellwether County. Yes. Does it restrict you from discussing official misconduct? Danielle's expression tightened. It restricts me from discussing my employment dispute. You will need to decide where one ends and the other begins. That will be my job, Maya said. Danielle gave us Marisol's full name. Then she held up one hand before Maya could write anything else. Do not contact her without a lawyer present. Raymond convinced her that speaking again would cost her daughter. The washers below us had stopped. For the first time since Tessa opened the red notebook, the floor was completely still. Marisol Vega agreed to meet only after Maya promised that her daughter's name would never appear in a filing, a press statement, or a conversation with a reporter. We met in the bakery Marisol owned on the south side of Bellwether. The shop had closed for the evening, but the ovens were still cooling. Warm air carried the smell of sugar and yeast through the empty room. Marisol sat at a table near the kitchen door with both hands wrapped around a paper cup she never drank from. She did not ask about my mother. She asked what I intended to do with her story. Verify it, I said. Use only what you authorize. And when the cameras come, they do not get your daughter. Marisol studied me for several seconds. Captain Cole told me the same thing 9 years ago. I waited. He said he was protecting my daughter from a custody investigation. Marisol reached into her handbag and removed a faded impound receipt. The paper had softened along the folds. A Bellwether Patrol unit number was printed near the bottom, along with the time her car had been taken. She told us that her husband had struck her during an argument and broken a kitchen chair. Danielle Price arrived first and treated Marisol as the victim. Raymond arrived later. By morning, the report described mutual violence. Marisol was listed as the primary aggressor. Her husband went home. She spent the night in custody. Captain Cole said if I fought the report, Family Services would ask whether I was stable enough to raise a child. Did he say that in front of anyone? Maya asked. A booking officer heard part of it. I do not know her name. Why did you stop fighting? Marisol looked toward the dark display case. Because my daughter was 7 and he wore a badge. She pushed the receipt toward Maya. This is all I kept. The receipt was not proof that Raymond had threatened her. It did give us a unit number, a date, and a time that could be compared against Danielle's original report and Tessa's dispatch notes. It was another direction, not yet an answer. At the hearing, Raymond's attorney stood before Tessa and asked whether she had been disciplined during her employment with Bellwether County. Yes, for attendance problems, for missing 2 shifts while my father was dying. Were you unhappy with the department? I was unhappy with many things. A few people in the room smiled. Tessa did not. The attorney turned toward the board. These witnesses did not come forward when the alleged events occurred. They came forward after Captain Cole became a candidate for sheriff and after Dr. Brooks began a public campaign against him. State counsel objected to the phrase public campaign. The board allowed the question but limited the witnesses to records and conduct they had personally observed. That ruling narrowed our case. It also improved it. Tessa could not testify that Raymond had attacked my mother. Danielle could not testify that he had altered every complaint. Marisol could not testify about what happened in our house. They could each carry one piece, nothing more. In Maya's office, 2 weeks before the hearing, I had stared at the growing stack of files and said the one thing I had been avoiding. My mother may never change her statement. Maya closed the folder in front of her. Then the case has to survive without asking her to. It felt like surrender. For days I had treated my mother's voice as the missing evidence. If I could make her say the correct words, Everything would align. The medical findings, the hospital witnesses, Raymond's interference. The years of signs I had ignored because she asked me to. Marisol changed that. She had once told the truth. The system had rewritten it anyway. My mother's silence was not the only problem. Raymond's ability to control what happened after a woman spoke was the larger one. I looked at the impound receipt, Danielle's transfer schedule, and the 3 case numbers from Tessa's red notebook. We stopped building the case around what my mother might say, I told Maya. What do we build it around? What existed before Raymond knew he needed to deny it? That became our rule. Records created before the press conference, schedules created before the hearing. Medical notes written before the campaign issued a statement. Evidence that did not need courage in order to remain true. At the hearing, Dr. Priya Nair opened my mother's medical record. Raymond's attorney approached her with a copy of the imaging report. The scan was normal, he said. It showed no acute vascular injury, no torn artery, correct, no fracture, correct, no medical emergency requiring surgery, correct. He turned slightly so the board could see the page. And Mrs. Cole told you she had fallen. She did. The attorney placed the report on the table. Then there is no medical evidence of strangulation. Priya looked at him. The scan answered whether an artery had been torn. It did not answer whether pressure had been applied to her neck. The room became still. She explained that voice changes, pain with swallowing, neck tenderness, and small areas of broken blood vessels could matter even when imaging did not show a catastrophic injury. She also explained that none of those findings identified who had caused them. She stayed within the border of what she knew. That made her harder to attack. Raymond's attorney tried another direction. Doctor, did Mrs. Cole ask to be rescued from her husband? No. Did she ask police to arrest him? No. Did she leave the hospital with him voluntarily? Yes. Raymond watched the board as each answer landed. He did not need the medical record to prove nothing had happened. He only needed my mother's refusal to make the truth look uncertain. The board chair glanced toward the witness list. Mrs. Eleanor Cole will be called next. Behind Raymond, my mother touched the blue bird at her throat. And for the first time since the hearing began, I wanted the chair to remain empty. Raymond did not ask my mother to sign the denial at the hospital. He waited until she was home. By then her scarf was back in the bedroom drawer. The bluebird brooch sat on the dresser beside a bottle of blood pressure medication. Raymond made coffee, placed 2 cups on the kitchen table, and spoke to her in the voice he used with frightened witnesses. Calm patient, certain that resistance was temporary. I learned the details later from a voicemail my mother left me by accident. She must have pressed my name while trying to end another call. The recording lasted less than a minute. Raymond's voice came first. If this continues, they will suspend me before the election. My mother said something too soft to understand. The campaign money is frozen. The association is waiting. Do you know what happens to this house if they take my income? Another pause. Then my mother, I do not want Lena blamed. She is not being blamed. She is being corrected. Paper moved across the table. Raymond told her the statement only confirmed what she had already said at the hospital. He reminded her that no artery had been torn, no bone had been broken. No police report had been requested. He arranged facts around her until there was no visible space left for fear. Then he used the sentence that mattered most. If you let her turn this into abuse, everyone will think you stayed with an abuser for 30 years. My mother had survived many things by believing they had not been serious enough to name. Raymond knew that. He did not threaten to hurt her. He threatened to make her entire life look foolish. The voicemail ended with the scratch of a pen. I listened to it twice in Maya's office. Can we use this? I asked. Not by itself, he pressured her. He discussed money, reputation, and the house. He did not explicitly order her to lie. He did not need to. I agree, Maya said. The board may not. She preserved the recording. We did not send it to my mother. We did not call and demand an explanation. For the first time, I followed my own triage rule. Safe tonight, choices tomorrow, decisions later. At the hearing, my mother walked to the witness table with one hand pressed against the blue bird at her throat. She took the oath. Raymond watched her with an expression that looked like concern from a distance. His attorney handed her the denial. Mrs. Cole, is that your signature? Yes. Did anyone force you to sign it? My mother looked at the page. No. Did Captain Cole strike you? No. Did he place his hands around your neck? Her thumb moved over the glass wing of the brooch. No. Then how were you injured? I slipped beside the bathtub. The answer was quiet, but the microphone carried it through the room. Raymond's attorney let the silence work for him, then he faced the board. The alleged victim denies the alleged act. The medical examination found no major injury. No criminal court has convicted Captain Cole of anything. What remains is a collection of old employment disputes assembled by a military officer who disagrees with her mother's choices. He returned to his seat. For several seconds, no one spoke. This was Raymond's best moment. The board members looked at the signed denial, then at my mother. One of them turned a page in the medical record and placed it face down. Another asked State Counsel whether an administrative finding could survive without the cooperation of the person allegedly harmed. The answer was yes. The tone suggested maybe. Raymond leaned toward his attorney. His shoulders loosened for the first time that morning. My mother began folding a fresh tissue. Once. Again. The board chair glanced toward the final name on the witness list. Is Major General Keegan present? Raymond's attorney checked the door. He was delayed, Madam Chair. We were told he was on the way. The chair looked at the clock. We will allow 5 minutes. Raymond turned slightly toward the reporters behind him. He did not smile, but he no longer needed to hide that he expected to win. The door opened before the 5 minutes passed. Thomas Keegan entered carrying a dark leather folder beneath one arm. His hair had gone almost completely white since I had last seen him. He paused to speak with the clerk, then followed her toward the witness table. Raymond stood to greet him. General, thank you for coming. Keegan extended his hand. Before he could take Raymond's hand, I lifted the sealed service record Maya had marked that morning and placed it beside Raymond's character statement. I had not planned to use it unless he made my military position part of his attack. He had described me as an inexperienced, part-time guard physician, often enough to make the record necessary. Madam Chair, before this witness reads a statement prepared by Captain Cole's campaign, I ask that Exhibit 22 be identified. The chair nodded to the clerk. She broke the seal and read the first line into the record. Brigadier General Lena Brooks, Assistant Adjutant General Army, Virginia National Guard. Only then did Keegan look up. His eyes moved from the document to my name card, then to my face. For a moment, I saw him search through 6 years of distance and find the Joint Operations Center where we had last worked together. General Brooks, the title moved through the room more effectively than a shout. Raymond's attorney looked at me. My mother stopped folding the tissue. Raymond recovered first. General Keegan, this is the family member I mentioned. Keegan did not take his eyes off me. You described her as a part-time guard physician. Raymond spread one hand. He said I served in the guard and practiced medicine, so the description was technically accurate. Keegan answered that it was incomplete in a way that changed its meaning. The board chair asked him to take the witness seat. He placed the leather folder on the table but did not open it. 6 years earlier, during a hurricane response, I had spent 4 nights inside a joint operations center where the backup generator failed every time the wind shifted east. 2 civilian hospitals had lost access to patient records. A nursing facility had to be evacuated before its oxygen supply ran out. Keegan had been the adjutant general then. I had led the medical coordination cell beneath him. There had been no ceremony, no cameras, no heroic photograph. Only maps covered in grease pencil, cold coffee, and names we kept moving from one column to another until everyone was accounted for. On the 4th morning, Keegan had placed a hand on the back of my chair and said, "Do not let anyone turn this into one person's victory." I had remembered that sentence longer than any commendation. Now he looked at Raymond's attorney. What exactly was I brought here to support? The attorney hesitated. Raymond answered for him, my character. Keegan rested one hand on the unopened folder. That depends on what I was told before I agreed to come. He opened the leather folder. The first page was a statement prepared by Raymond's campaign attorney. Keegan read it without speaking. His thumb stopped halfway down the paper. The board chair asked what he had been told about my role in the complaint. Keegan said he had been told Captain Cole's stepdaughter was a part-time guard physician who had used family influence and military contacts to pressure the department. Raymond's attorney objected that no one had intended to misstate my service. Keegan turned one page. The statement described me as a resentful relative with no operational connection to law enforcement or public safety. It praised Raymond for remaining calm while an inexperienced military doctor escalated a private medical disagreement. Keegan closed the folder. I cannot tell this board what happened inside Captain Cole's home. I was not there, but I can tell you this statement did not identify General Brooks truthfully. He explained my current position without adding ceremony. Assistant Adjutant General for the Army component of the Virginia National Guard. Emergency physician, former commander of the Medical Coordination Cell during the hurricane response where he and Raymond had both served. Then he stopped. He did not list awards. He did not describe me as fearless or brilliant. He simply told the board that Raymond had supplied an incomplete description designed to make my professional judgment appear trivial. Raymond leaned toward his microphone. My stepdaughter's rank has nothing to do with whether my wife fell. Keegan nodded. That is correct. For the first time that morning, Raymond looked relieved. Then Keegan placed one finger on the closed folder. Her rank is not evidence against you. Your decision to misrepresent it is evidence about the reliability of what you told me. You did not ask me to defend the truth, you asked me to defend an omission. The air conditioner clicked. A reporter lowered her phone and began writing by hand. Raymond's attorney asked whether Keegan still intended to read his character statement. No, I am withdrawing a statement prepared from information I now know was misleading. Keegan slid the folder away. The pen beside his hand remained capped. I had put the service record on the table. He had confirmed why Raymond's omission mattered. Keegan corrected the record and nothing more. That was enough to change how the next document entered the room. State Counsel called the outside investigator assigned after Bellwether County terminated Raymond. She carried a certified report containing access records recovered from the department's archive. Those records still existed because Maya had sent the preservation notice the morning after the hospital visit. Under the department's normal retention schedule, part of the access history would have been overwritten before the hearing. Raymond's attorney objected to the implication that anyone had tried to destroy evidence. State Counsel agreed. No one is alleging destruction, she said. The notice preserved records that would otherwise have been deleted automatically. The distinction mattered. We did not need a dramatic act of concealment. Routine deletion would have protected Raymond just as effectively. The investigator rotated the monitor toward Raymond. State Counsel asked me to identify the sequence I had built from the records preserved after the hospital visit. I opened the index Maya and I had assembled and placed one hand beside the first 3 case numbers. 3 case numbers, 3 reclassifications, 1 supervisor credential. Each file had been opened after its original entry, and each classification had changed within a day. One moved from suspected domestic assault to verbal family disturbance. Another lost the designation indicating an identified victim. Marisol Vega's case changed from a domestic assault with a primary aggressor to mutual combat. The modifications came from a supervisor terminal inside Raymond's division. His credentials had been used. Raymond's attorney established that credentials were sometimes shared and that officers occasionally remained signed in while another supervisor used a terminal. The investigator could not testify that Raymond's hands had touched the keyboard. The answer gave him room, and he used it. He told the board that shared terminals were common, the department equipment was outdated, and anyone who had worked there knew it. The investigator did not argue. She turned to the next page. The access records established what had changed and which credential had been active. They did not establish whose hands made the changes. That was the limit of the first layer, and it was why the next one mattered. Tessa identified the original dispatch categories, and the exact time supervisors had asked her to remove those incidents from the daily list. Her red spiral notebook contained the same 3 case numbers, written years before my mother entered the hospital. Raymond's attorney held it up and reminded the board that a private handwritten notebook could be changed. Tessa agreed. She also agreed that she could have written the entries the previous month. Then she pointed to the water stain crossing 2 pages. It came from the dispatch roof leak during the Bellwether floods. The department had photographed the damaged workstations for an insurance claim. State Counsel displayed the old insurance photograph. Tessa's red notebook lay beside the dispatch console, open to one of the pages now before the board. The same water stain crossed the same entries. The room did not erupt. No one gasped. The notebook simply became older than Raymond's explanation. Danielle testified next. She described the report she had written after responding to Marisol's home, including the damaged chair, the injury inside Marisol's lip, and her conclusion that Marisol's husband was the primary aggressor. Raymond had instructed her to reclassify the incident as mutual violence. She refused. 3 days later, she was transferred to permanent night duty. Raymond's attorney suggested the transfer reflected ordinary staffing shortages. Danielle agreed staffing had been short. State counsel placed the archived email beside the monitor. I turned the evidence index to page 6. Your words, I said. Clean up the narrative. The email Raymond sent Danielle's supervisor read, Price is unwilling to clean up the narrative on the Vega matter. Move her where review responsibility is limited until she understands command expectations. The same phrase, clean up the narrative, appeared in a campaign email Raymond sent after my mother's hospital visit. Repeated language did not prove he had attacked my mother. It proved that altering a narrative was not a concept invented by 3 former employees after watching a press conference. Raymond read the email before answering. He said command expectations referred to report quality, and Danielle had difficulty following supervisory direction. A board member asked which fact in her original report had been incorrect. Raymond paused before saying the conclusion. The member looked back at the email. What he called review was a demand to change the conclusion, followed by a transfer when the officer refused. Raymond never raised his voice. He fought for every inch of language. Marisol entered through the side door after the board cleared the room of campaign volunteers who had been filming witnesses without permission. She sat with her hands beneath the table. State counsel limited her testimony to the night documented in Danielle's report. Marisol described the broken chair, the blood inside her lip, and Raymond arriving after the first officer. She said he warned that continuing to accuse her husband could raise questions about whether she was stable enough to care for her daughter. Raymond's attorney established that Marisol had been arrested and charged as the primary aggressor. He argued that Raymond had not invented her legal situation. No, Marisol said, he created the report that produced it. The attorney displayed the final incident record and noted that Danielle's name appeared as the reporting officer while Raymond's did not. Marisol removed the faded impound receipt from her bag. The unit number printed at the bottom belonged to Raymond's command vehicle. The time placed that vehicle at her home 23 minutes before the report was reclassified. The receipt did not record his words, it placed him there. Danielle's original report showed what she had written. Tessa's notebook showed when the category changed. The Access Archive showed which credentials were active. Raymond's email showed what happened to the officer who refused. Marisol's receipt placed his vehicle at the scene before the altered report entered the system. Each item was limited enough to attack alone. Together they stopped behaving like coincidence. Raymond asked to address the board. He said the witnesses had coordinated after seeing his press conference, political opponents had encouraged old grievances, and my rank gave the allegations a credibility ordinary complaints never received. On that last point he was partly right. The hospital had listened when I asked for an independent examiner. A lawyer had answered my call quickly. People returned messages because of the letters after my name. Power changes how fast doors open. That was why I had been careful not to confuse access with truth. State counsel placed the dates on the screen in the same order as my evidence index. Tessa's notebook appeared in an insurance photograph years before the campaign. Danielle's transfer order predated my mother's injury by almost a decade. Raymond's archived email had been stored long before I filed the complaint. Marisol's impound receipt had spent 9 years folded inside a kitchen drawer. The women had found one another after the press conference. Their evidence had not. The board chair looked at the clock. If there is no additional evidence regarding the central incident, the record will close after a brief recess. Raymond sat back. He had lost control of the old cases, but my mother's denial still stood. Behind him, Eleanor stopped folding the tissue. Her fingers moved to the pin beneath the blue glass bird. My mother pressed 2 fingers beneath it. The board chair was gathering her papers when Eleanor spoke. I need to correct something. Her voice was still rough. Raymond turned before anyone else did. Ellie, you have already answered. The chair looked at him. Captain Cole, she was not speaking to you. My mother lowered her hands. For several seconds the brooch remained fastened. Then she pushed the pin backward through the scarf. The metal caught in the fabric. She tried again. The blue bird came free and struck the wooden witness table with a small, clear sound. The air conditioner had not clicked yet. Everyone heard it. My mother placed the scarf beside the brooch. The skin along her neck had healed. Nothing dramatic remained there, no purple handprint. No wound shaped like certainty. She looked at the denial she had signed. I did fall beside the bathtub, she said. Raymond released a breath. But not because I slipped. Raymond's attorney objected that she had already testified and suggested an influence might have occurred during a recess. The chair reminded him that there had been no recess and directed him to sit down. My mother unfolded the tissue in front of her. She smoothed it once and left it open. Raymond pushed me into the bathroom wall. When I told him I was leaving, he put his arm across my neck. Raymond leaned toward his microphone. She is confused. My mother flinched at his voice. I felt my body move before I allowed it to. My hand lifted from the table, but I stopped there. This was not my statement to complete. The board chair offered my mother a break and reminded her that she could ask for counsel. She declined both and said Maya had already explained her rights. Maya did not move from beside me. My mother looked at Raymond. You said I fell and you found me on the floor. His expression remained controlled. That is what happened. No, she said, you put me there. The sentence was quieter than the air conditioner. It changed the room anyway. My mother told the board that she had planned to stay with a friend after telling Raymond she wanted a separation. He asked whether she intended to embarrass him before the election. When she tried to pass him in the bathroom doorway, he forced her backward against the wall. She remembered pressure across the front of her neck. She remembered the edge of the sink against her hip. She remembered waking on the tile while Raymond pressed a wet towel against her face and told her she had frightened him. State counsel asked what Raymond had said at the hospital. My mother answered that he warned Lena would destroy everything if she made the incident sound worse than it was. Asked whether he had physically forced her to sign the denial, my mother looked down. He did not hold my hand. Raymond's attorney seized on the answer and characterized the signature as voluntary. My mother considered that description before explaining what the paper had cost her. I signed because he told me I would lose my home, my insurance, my friends, and every good memory of my marriage if I admitted what happened. Raymond shook his head. I explained the consequences of a false accusation. My mother looked at him fully for the first time. You explained the consequences of telling the truth. No one applauded. There was no sudden wave of courage through the gallery. Reporters did not stand. General Keegan did not speak. My mother's hand began to tremble. The board chair asked whether she wanted someone beside her. Eleanor looked at me. I did not rise. I waited until she nodded. Then I crossed the small distance between us and sat in the chair beside the witness table. I did not touch her until she turned her palm upward. Her fingers were cold. Raymond watched us as if the gesture were another piece of evidence he needed to defeat. His attorney requested time to challenge the changed testimony. The board allowed limited questions. Raymond did not lose control. He did something more familiar. He tried to restore order. Through his attorney, he asked whether I had discussed the 3 other women with my mother, promised her housing, used my military position to influence investigators, or allowed fear of public embarrassment to reshape her memory. My mother answered some questions and said she did not know the answers to others. She admitted she still loved Raymond. She admitted she had considered withdrawing the complaint again that morning. She admitted that seeing Marisol at the witness table had made her recognize words Raymond had used on her for years. None of those answers made her a perfect witness. They made her a human one. When the record finally closed, the board entered a private session. We waited in the hallway. Raymond stood at the opposite end with his attorney. His campaign manager spoke into a phone with one hand covering her mouth. 2 police association representatives removed the campaign badges from their jackets before leaving through a side door. General Keegan approached me. I am sorry I did not ask more questions before agreeing to come. You corrected what you knew. It should not have taken seeing you. No, I said. It should not have. He accepted that. He did not salute. He did not offer to make calls. He left the hearing the same way he had entered, carrying the unsigned statement beneath his arm. My mother sat on a wooden bench with the blue bird in her palm. Are you angry with me? She asked. Yes, her eyes lowered. I am also glad you told them. Can both things be true? They already are. The board reconvened after 40 minutes. The chair read the decision in an even voice. The evidence did not depend on a criminal conviction. The board found that Raymond had engaged in serious misconduct, misrepresented material facts, interfered with official reporting, and demonstrated conduct incompatible with the honesty required of a certified law enforcement officer. His decertification was sustained. He retained the right to seek judicial review. The criminal investigation into my mother's assault and the altered records would continue separately. Raymond did not look at me when the decision ended. He gathered his papers, left the character statement on the table, and walked out beside his attorney. His campaign for sheriff ended 2 days later. The police association withdrew its endorsement. Donors suspended the remaining commitments. Bellwether County opened an outside review of the 3 older cases and several others identified through the same classification pattern. Nothing happened as quickly as television would later imply. Raymond was not led from the hearing in handcuffs. My mother did not become fearless. I did not feel victorious. Official consequences moved through calendars, notices, interviews, and court dates. Healing moved even more slowly. 6 weeks after the hearing, my mother moved into a transitional apartment on the other side of Richmond. The building had beige walls, narrow windows, and a kitchen drawer that would not close unless lifted slightly. She complained about the water pressure and the neighbor's television. Those complaints comforted me. They belonged to an ordinary life. I helped her unpack plates. She placed 3 in the cabinet, then sat down. I almost called him last night, she said. I kept stacking bowls. What stopped you? I did not know what I would say. That is enough for tonight. She looked at me. You are not going to take my phone? No, or tell me what happens if I go back. You already know. I set the last bowl on the shelf. Tonight you are safe. Tomorrow you have choices. We can make decisions later. She smiled without humor. That sounds like something a doctor says. It is something I should have said sooner. My mother reached into her handbag and removed the blue glass bird. For most of my life I had seen that brooch pinned to fabric. It had held collars together, fixed torn hems, and kept a scarf tight around an injury no one was supposed to notice. She carried it to the window. Morning light passed through the blue wings and cast a small shape across the white sill. She did not fasten it to anything. For years I believed truth worked like a command. State it clearly enough and people would move. I was wrong. Evidence can preserve a fact. A hearing can enforce a consequence. A uniform can make someone finally listen. None of those things can order a frightened person to become free. The best I could do was keep the door open without standing in it. My mother had spent 32 years asking permission to describe her own life. That morning, the blue bird rested in the light, and nothing was holding it against her throat. The general had recognized my rank in a hearing room. That recognition mattered because Raymond had built his defense by reducing me to a resentful daughter who played soldier on weekends. The service record removed that mask. General Keegan's refusal to repeat a statement built on an omission forced the board to measure Raymond's words more carefully. But the general's recognition was not the freedom that changed our lives. My mother's recognition was, she recognized that love did not make pressure harmless. She recognized that a signature could be written by her hand and still carry another person's will. She recognized the language Raymond had used on Marisol, Danielle, and Tessa because he had used versions of it on her for years. Most of all, she recognized that telling the truth did not erase the life she had lived. It gave that life back to her. There is a difference between exposing someone and freeing the person they controlled. Exposure belongs to records, witnesses, dates, and consequences. Freedom belongs to the moment after those things, when no board is in session and no one is watching. It belongs to a quiet kitchen, a difficult phone left untouched, and a choice that can be made tomorrow instead of being forced tonight. That was the lesson I had failed to understand at the hospital. I had tried to make my mother give me the answer that would save her. Raymond had spent years deciding which answers she was allowed to give. My urgency came from love, but urgency can still sound like another command to someone whose choices have been taken from her. Preserving evidence was necessary, building the record was necessary. Leaving her room to choose was necessary too. If this story reminded you of someone whose silence has been mistaken for consent, remember that support does not always begin with demanding an answer. Sometimes it begins by preserving what can be preserved, believing what fear makes difficult to say, and leaving a safe door open. It can mean offering a place to sleep without attaching a deadline. It can mean keeping copies of records without using them as leverage. It can mean asking what would make tonight safer and accepting that tomorrow's decision still belongs to them. Share this story with someone who may need that reminder today. Subscribe for more stories about dignity, accountability, and the quiet choices that finally change a life. The general recognized who I was. My mother remembered who she still had the right to become.